Hey folks, Fernando doing our video for the Modern Survivalist, and as the title just says, Argentina just became Venezuela. It's sad, but it is what it is. There's really not any other way of putting it. Cristina Kirchner is now back in power. She just won the elections 3 days ago this past Sunday, and that's it. Mauricio Macri still, until now, the president, but just lost the elections, and Mauricio Macri was a little bit of a miracle in Argentina, won by barely 1.5 points of a difference. Market-friendly type of guy, center-right leaning, friends with Trump's, open to trade with other countries. Someone serious, respectable, someone that could effectively take Argentina out of its terrible path. But people chose to go back to the good old ways, and I mean that ironically, going back to the socialism, populism, this Peronist idea of doing things, sort of a mixture of nationalism and corruption, and a huge mess, really. It's very sad. And surprisingly, it's surprising how fast things have been moving. I was just reading right now, there's already a project being presented to replace the federal police with what's called a democratic national police. You're wondering, what's a freaking democratic national police? Well, it's kind of like a morality, political correct police that's going to be making sure everyone is staying in line. It's very much similar to what Maduro has in Venezuela with his own national democratic police, which basically makes sure there's no opposition growing and becoming strong, and anyone that is falling out of line gets corrected quite fast. It's surreal, but it's going down like that. Keep in mind, Cristina Kirchner, she has 5 arrest warrants out on her, and she's now becoming vice president of Argentina, and her secretary is going to be the actual president, right? But as he said himself, this Alberto Fernandez, who used to be her secretary, said, "When I speak, Cristina speaks." So the guy says, I'm a freaking puppet, Cristina is a real power, but she's the vice president and I'm standing as a president with no power of any kind. Everyone in the government is going to be her people and responding to her, not to me. Even in the speech she spoke first, there's photographs of her standing in front of him while the guy that's actually the president is standing on the back. How is it that she's not arrested with 5 arrest warrants out of her? Well, because she enjoys diplomatic immunity, because she's a senator and you cannot arrest her because of that. So being a senator, she's protected and she's not banned from running to office, and it just went down like that. And some people are very desperate. If you're wondering how people are feeling right now in Argentina, man, the response is quite terrible. Of course, you have some folks that are very happy with this. You had like 47% of the country pretty much voted for this to go down again. And you may be wondering, why are people so stupid in Argentina? It's a little bit more complex at that. There's several factors going down. First of all, keep in mind that Cristina Kirchner and her husband before her, they ruled with an iron fist in Argentina for 12 years before Mauricio Macri. And one of the first things socialists do is attack children. They go after education at a very early age, primary and secondary, high school, that sort of thing. They make sure their agenda is engraved in children's minds. So by the time they are old enough to vote, which is surprisingly fast, it happens in just a few years, they have already new generations of supporters, and that helped her a great deal. Besides that, of course, there's probably a little bit more of influence of Maduro from Venezuela. He was talking about Bolivarian winds of change, talking along with Russia, who's obviously supporting Maduro in his attempts to destabilize the region. So he made those references regarding the uprisings in Chile, which you clearly see his hand over there. How is it that all of a sudden, because of our raise in bus tickets, Chile is burning? That doesn't make really a lot of sense. And there's been specific mentions of foreign operatives among those crowds going against the police that were not local. So there's probably a little bit of that as well going on in Argentina too. And there's been fraud as well, several accounts. There's been 500 cases of fraud or manipulation of the elections as well. But still, the obvious support from the population is still quite there. And that is why they're back in power, basically. So why is it that people are doing? Well, they are, a lot of people are very happy, as I was saying before. A lot of people are very scared, and they're looking to ways of course, protecting themselves, which is something that I talk about in my Spanish channel. I have a Spanish channel that's called Supervivencia Moderna. I'll leave the link there somewhere below in case you're interested in watching that, if you speak Spanish yourself or and you want to see what that's about. But I get a lot of messages, especially now. It's been blowing up. I got like 9,000 new subscribers in less than a month. So obviously a lot of interest for the kind of thing I do here in this channel. Practical stuff regarding survival and preparedness, many times linked to the political aspect of what's going down, how that is affecting people. Now, with a case like this, it's very tough because you don't really have a lot of options. I mean, I talk a lot about self-defense. I talk a lot about that in my books. And I can give you good tips regarding that, how to protect yourself from crime, from the violence on the streets, dealing with riots and all that stuff. At the end of the day, living in that mess is something that you have to ask yourself if you're willing to do that. So one of the things that people have been asking me about a lot of has been regarding how to get the hell out of there. And the advice is valid for you guys as well. What I'm telling them, of course, is if you can get a second citizenship, that's usually one of the best ways for people in Argentina who usually have a Spanish and Italian ancestry. That's usually a good way of getting yourself an Italian or Spanish passport, which opens a big window of opportunities, not only for Europe, but also for our countries as well, where the European passport is much better received than the Argentine one. So that's something a lot of people are probably looking into. Then you have, of course, if that's not an option or if that's not something that interests you, there's different programs for young people in places like Australia and Canada. They have programs for people that are of a certain age, so as to go, work holiday visa, so they go there for a year and they have the chance of staying beyond that year if they get a contract. So that's actually an option. I have a good friend that ended up doing that and is currently living in New Zealand. I also have a very good friend from the United States who was positive that he would never get a second citizenship from anywhere. A guy that has served in the U.S. military, in the Marines, and he told me many times over the years, Fernando, I'm never going to be getting any of that. I'm not interested. And one day he said, well, I'm starting to look into it. He was going through the Irish passport path. As it happened, he waited so much that by the time he got interested into the possibility of maybe considering that, he was just too old to get it. There's an age limit for some of these things, and that's a real shame. If you missed that opportunity because you just let it pass as years went by, guys, it's a topic that a lot of people struggle a little bit with, about getting a second citizenship, even if that's an option. I always have no doubts whatsoever. Go for it, because it's not just for you, it's for your kids, for even your grandkids, that you may be passing it along, and you just never know what may end up happening in the future. I'll do a specific video about that because it's a topic on its own, but that's one of the things that people are asking me a lot about. They're asking me a lot about self-defense, about guns as well. There's not that huge of a firearms culture in Argentina. And especially when these things happen, a lot of people that were not interested so much in guns all of a sudden realize, okay, I need to get myself a freaking gun. They're already talking also about banning guns for people, or at least making it much harder for people to get guns. So even though it's a saturated topic in the survival and prepper community, guns, how many guns do you need? Well, guns are important for self-defense, for protecting your rights, but definitely for self-defense as well. When things are getting this nasty in a place like Argentina right now, and you're seeing people talking about a democratic national police being installed, it's quite scary. Now, with a cap on the US dollar, there's resurging of the interest in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. I've known for some time that it's been pretty big in Venezuela as a pretty useful tool for people to keep savings in, move assets around. In some African countries that are not as stable, crypto, specifically Bitcoin, is quite handy, quite useful. And I always suggest, if you're thinking about it, go into it, give it a try. I'll also leave the link for my affiliate Coinbase little link thing, which gives you, like, if you buy $100, it gives you 10%. It gives you $110 worth of Bitcoin, and I get a kickback of that. It's like $10 for me as well. So we both make $10 on that. But it's I was telling guys from the Spanish channel, if they bought Bitcoin when I told them to buy a couple weeks ago, it had already gone up 15% by now. Bitcoin is always going up and down, and at the end of the day, you should never put anything you're not willing to risk in an investment. But it's quite interesting, and at least getting your feet wet in the water in that regard, and kind of understanding how that works, I definitely think it's valuable. One day it may be quite huge, and you may be very glad that you at least bought some of that stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something else to keep in mind. This is quite interesting, I've also been getting quite a bit of troll attacks. So there's people that are, of course, pro Kirchner, that will go in YouTube in the comments and, oh, you bastard, this and that. But then I've seen a lot of very generic names like Jonathan Simmons, or like the Spanish version of that, like Julián Hernández or Gustavo López. That would be the similar thing like John Smith, John Doe, Richard, whatever, right? All super generic names, and you look into them and they have nothing. They have, of course, no videos of their own. They have nothing. All they have is these pro-Kirchner type of comments all over YouTube. They share many of them, for whatever reason. I checked like 10, 12 before blocking them, of course, but I checked a few of them. They share some type of rock music, so as to seem as some kind of activity that is not politically related, but they're so obviously bots, like paid people that are probably somewhere organizing so as to do these things, and they usually comment all at the same time. Very interesting stuff. I've known that there's been different offices in Argentina with these people operating in this way so as to set trends, but it's quite interesting to see them going after you. So yeah, man, it's unfortunate, and sure, there's things that you can see from this, learn from this, and apply to yourself. We always like to think that it's never going to be happening to us, and I bet people in Venezuela, when Chavez was first elected, never thought it would end up this way. I'm pretty sure that people right now in Argentina are not thinking that's going to be ending up like Venezuela, even though it clearly is. And little by little, these changes happen. If within 3 days of the election there's already a project presented by a senator about having a democratic national police, things are going to be getting quite interesting. Guys, if you are interested in this type of survival and preparedness I usually do, check my book, Street Survival Skills. This is my latest book, and the one I recommend because of all the practical advice that it has, and it's quite useful for this sort of thing. Self-defense, awareness, a bunch of our stuff that you'll no doubt find useful, and of course my other books as well, also in the links there below. Guys, it's going to be all for now. Remember to subscribe to the channel and stay linked so as to stay aware of whatever updates go down in terms of Argentina. I think we're going to be seeing some sad but at very least interesting stuff happening. Lessons learned, sure, but it's nice to learn from other people's mistakes, from other societies' mistakes, and use that for our own advantage. In my case, it's very painful because this is my country that's going down this path. At the same time, I'm glad I'm not there, So, being completely honest, that's something. It's a mixture of feelings. You feel sorry for it, you're glad you're not there, but it still hurts like hell because you wish, especially when we were so close to make a real change so as to be a developed nation once and for all. If Macri had a little bit more of a chance, it could have been very much different. Folks, see you on our next video. Have an awesome day.